evening. I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, Trump kowtows to Putin, calling up the Russian president for the first time since the Mueller report that found the Russian government interfered in the 2016 presidential election. So, did Trump take Putin on?
Did you ask him not to meddle in the next election?
We didn't discuss that. Really, we didn't discuss it.
So what did they talk about?
Over an hour, and we talked about many things. We discussed 5 or 6 things. We also we went into great detail on various things.
Great detail, various things, 5 or 6 things, in fact, but nothing about Putin's attack on Trump's country. Let's play the full exchange.
Mr. President, did you tell him not to meddle in the next election?
Excuse me, I'm answering this question. You are very rude. So we had a good conversation about many different things, okay?
Did you ask him not to meddle in the next election?
We didn't discuss that. Really, we didn't discuss it.
Didn't discuss it? Look, the president called up Putin. They talked for an hour and a half, and yet couldn't bring up the one issue that his own top aides have been warning him about. Just take what Trump's own FBI director said days ago.
We're very much viewing 2018 as just kind of a dress rehearsal for the big show in 2020.
A dress rehearsal for an attack on the 2020 election, an attack on America, but the president of the United States didn't bring it up. So what did he discuss? Apparently, the fact that he thinks the Russia report's a joke.
We discussed it. He actually sort of smiled when he said something to the effect that it started off as a mountain and it ended up being a mouse. But he knew that because he knew there was no collusion whatsoever. Pretty much that's what it was.
That was it. What about Mueller's findings that, quote, the Russian government interfered in the 2016 presidential election in sweeping and systematic fashion? Nothing about that. Just talk about how the whole thing was a mouse. Trump even going on Twitter to discuss his call with Putin. And there he wrote, we discussed trade, Venezuela, Ukraine, North Korea, nuclear arms control, and even the Russian hoax. That's what he thinks. But of course, it's not a hoax. Mueller's investigation has so far resulted in 199 criminal counts, 37 people and entities charged, a majority of them, of course, Russian, 5 people sentenced to prison. And that's on Russia. Today, Trump didn't just kowtow to Putin on Russia's election interference. He also took Putin's side on another crucial front.
Venezuela was one of the topics, and he is not looking at all to get involved in Venezuela other than he'd like to see something positive happen for Venezuela. And I feel the same way.
Well, not looking to get involved is just blatantly false, according to Trump's own top team.
This is our hemisphere. It's not where the Russians ought to be interfering. This is a mistake on their part.
Maduro is surrounded by Cubans and has been supported by Russians there in Venezuela. And we've told the Russians and we've told the Cubans that's unacceptable.
Well, you're telling him that, but the president says that Putin's not looking at all to get involved. Too bad Trump feels the same as Putin, not Pompeo. Abby Phillip is out front live outside the White House. Abby, why is the president so afraid yet again in this lengthy call to go against Putin?
Well, this is the question, Erin, that people outside of the White House are really stewing over and have been for over 2 years now. But inside the White House, a lot of people believe that this is just part of President Trump's belief that building a personal relationship with Putin is part of unlocking, in the president's view, the key to stability in foreign relations around the world. Now, a lot of people think that's pretty naive, but you see some patterns here in the way that the president is dealing with the Russian interference issue, but also the Venezuela issue. The president has repeatedly taken Vladimir Putin's side, almost repeating word for word things that Vladimir Putin tells him that are contrary to what he's being told by his own aides. And we're also learning tonight that in the case of Venezuela, this is what has been happening behind the scenes. The president has been expressing some doubt about the intelligence that has gone into the assessment about what's going on the ground in Venezuela. And then in this call with Putin this morning, the president then took exactly what Vladimir Putin said, repeated reported it to the press as fact, and seemed to throw the entire U.S. foreign policy when it comes to Venezuela up into arms. It's still an open question why the president continues to do this, why he continues after 2 years, now that he has his full team in place in all levels of the national security apparatus here, why he continues to doubt them. But it is something that has now caused his Secretary of State and his national security advisor to really try to pick up the pieces on this issue of Venezuela that has been so sensitive. And frankly, Aaron, lives are at stake here, but the president seems to be in this moment taking Vladimir Putin's side on such a sensitive issue. Aaron.
Abby, thank you. And now Steve Hall, former CIA chief of Russia operations, April Ryan, White House correspondent for American Urban Radio Networks, and David Gergen, who, of course, served as advisor to 4 presidents. So, David, let me start with you. The president initiates this call. He calls President Putin. It goes for over an hour, says the president, an hour and a half, says Putin's top aide. No mention of Russian interference. How is that possible?
Well, it's just another day at the office, isn't it, really? You know, it's not surprising, but still breathtaking that the President of the United States, contradicting his own top intelligence people, contradicting the head of the FBI, who just a week ago was saying this was a dress rehearsal for 2020 interference in our elections, has basically dismissed the whole idea of Russian interference, and it's called again into question. Are we really entering an election period in which the Russians are going to have free play in our election system, tilting the board, and at the same time there's going to be evidence of suppression of voting in a variety of places around the country? Does that really going to give the voters confidence in our system? I don't think so. I think the very point that Russians are making is to undermine our democracy.
I mean, Steve, it did seem, I mean, it was sort of stupefying to refer to the entire thing as a mouse, sort of refer to it as a joke, that Putin's smiling.
I mean, Aaron, I'm stupefied. The question is why, and that's what everybody's been asking, in the lead up to this piece. And I think, sensible-minded people are saying, why is it that we're having another Helsinki moment where the president of the United States, who first and foremost, if he has that long of a phone call, he's got to raise what everybody, his political opponents, his own Secretary of State, his own intelligence services, everybody has said that the Russians, did this. They attacked our democracy, and he doesn't do anything. When you answer the question why, I've only got 2 options for you. The first is the Russians do indeed have something on Donald Trump, whether it's business related or whatever that hasn't been made public yet, that makes him very cautious when dealing with Vladimir Putin, or he simply doesn't get it. He simply doesn't understand what Putin and Russia are all about. Either one or neither one is a good option.
No, in April, when Steve refers to a Helsinki moment, that's what we were thinking of when this happened. It is incredibly reminiscent of this.
So I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today.
He was excoriated for that by Democrats and Republicans. That was Helsinki. Yeah. It was nearly a year ago.
Yeah.
Why are we back here?
You know why we're back here? And it's not a learning curve issue. This president has been president long enough, and he understands what's going on. Going back to the Mueller report, Aaron, where the report talked about this president being president and the Russians hopeful that he would be president because it would be favorable to them, this just goes back to prove what the Mueller report said. And I talked to an official, a former intelligence official, who does not want to be identified. But that official said, look, this is showing that Trump is under the control of Russia. So this is very bad. And going back to President Obama, then President Barack Obama, when he told Vladimir Putin to knock it off, not only did he tell him to knock it off, I've been told he leveled a warning or a threat, if you will, that there will be something to follow if you don't. So, for this president not to at least say, you've got to stop it, or even question, something is wrong. So you got to wonder why he didn't do it.
Steve, we have a picture of Putin on the phone with Trump. We don't yet have one of Trump on the phone with Putin, but we have this picture. Aside from the bizarreness of the phone and the phone corp, which I bet you would have a lot to say about, actually, the point I'm making here is that he's not smiling, although obviously the way Trump described the conversation was there was a moment that was, Putin was, described as smiling, obviously very friendly. What does Putin take away from the call? And I guess, Steve, perhaps most important, from Trump's performance after the call with the American people and the press?
What Vladimir Putin takes away from this is he sits back and he says, okay, we did this massive influence operation, these active measures against the United States that led to the 2016 elections. The guy that we wanted to win over the person we didn't want to win, that worked out okay for us. Yeah, we took some lumps along the way, but our return on investment on this has been amazingly good. And we can do it again in 2020, and we will. I think that's what Vladimir Putin takes away from this.
And again, just to emphasize what Chris Wray, President Trump's FBI director, is saying is that it was all a dry run, and they're in the midst of a much bigger attack and bigger plan now, which the President of the United States, of course, didn't even acknowledge existed in that call. David, this is taking on intelligence agencies. Perhaps in the past, Trump could say, well, maybe, it was intelligence agencies run by people that aren't my people. Now, of course, Mike Pompeo has said all of this. This here on Venezuela are Trump's handpicked people in their handpicked jobs. Here they are.
Venezuela was one of the topics, and he is not looking at all to get involved in Venezuela, other than he'd like to see something positive happen for Venezuela. And I feel the same way.
So he said not looking at all to get involved in Venezuela. Of course, David, what I referred to there, Pompeo saying we told the Russians and Cubans their interference is unacceptable. Bolton, this is not where the Russians ought to be interfering. Those are the top two national security advisors the president has.
Yeah, it was the Secretary of State who just yesterday said the Russians, along with the Cubans, are, quote, invading. They're invading Venezuela. And I think there are two things that Putin is seeking here, and he's won on both counts here today in this phone call. One is to weaken our democracy here at home, to undermine faith and trust in the system that we've had for so long, we've always believed in and voting. And the second is to give himself a room to create mischief in countries where we may be vulnerable, or they can advance their own interests. And that's what he's done in Venezuela. The president has given him a pass for the Russians going in there and defending the Maduro regime. We've been trying to help the opposition in Venezuela. This weakens the opposition.
Right.
And it's a president who is tearing up his own foreign policy to serve some ulterior motive. We can't even figure out what it is.
And what's fascinating about that too is this is so close to home, right? This is Venezuela.
Yes.
This is in the same hemisphere. There is no difference in time or space. April, is the president aware of what his staff is saying? I mean, he's watching TV all day. I don't know how he misses it. But why does he publicly contradict Pompeo and Bolton?
Because he doesn't care. It's about him and what he feels. He goes by his knee-jerk reactions versus listening to those who are supposed to advise him, who understand what's going on. I mean, the president still gets bullet points on intelligence if he does that anymore. So, I mean, why would he listen to people? He believes that he is the end-all, be-all. When the decision is made, it's about him and his decision alone.
All right,
Period. End of story.
Thank you all very much. And next, a new call for impeachment proceedings coming from a former member of Ken Starr's team. He's out front. Plus, President Trump touting today's big job numbers.
The economy is unbelievable. We're at 3.6% unemployment. That's the lowest number since 1969.
With numbers like those, are Democrats doomed in 2020? And Trump seizing on a report that the FBI sent an investigator to meet with a former campaign aide, calling it worse than Watergate. But hear why a former FBI official under Trump, a Republican, says the president is wrong.
But I'm ready now, I'm waiting for your triumphant return. You're coming soon. There will be a day when we'll be counted. So no one will. No one will. People get ready. Jesus is coming. Somebody's coming home. People get ready. Jesus is coming to take from the world. People get ready. Jesus is coming. Somebody's coming home. People get ready. Jesus is coming to take from the world. People get ready.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything else that stands out to you? Is it just one thing, or are there others? I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of specifics, but what else would you highlight as grounds?
I think the firing of Comey is another example where the president was acting in a way to further his own in his own legal benefit. I think the efforts to influence Sessions to unrecuse himself or to fire the special counsel, to me, that is all falls well into the boundaries of the Saturday Night Massacre idea, and that is the firing of your own prosecutor. I don't think that's a crime, a federal criminal crime under the code, but I do think it is impeachable conduct, and that's where Congress is supposed to step in. That's why we have separation of powers. That's why the president, under the Constitution, cannot pardon himself from impeachment proceedings.
All right, so you've read it, you see impeachable conduct. Let me get to the part of the issue here, right? The issue here is that, among many issues, is that people like Nancy Pelosi just they don't think that they can get this done, and they worry that if they don't get it done, they repeat Clinton and they're dealt a loss in the election. And to this point, a recent CNN poll found about 37% of Americans believe President Trump should be impeached. 60%, close to it, oppose that move. Would launching impeachment proceedings change those numbers?
It might. So the fact of the matter
So
is,
why?
a lot of people have not read the report. Most people haven't read all 400 pages. Most people probably haven't read 50 pages. So they don't know what happened. So of the majority of people that are not in favor of impeachment right now, some are Trump supporters, never want to have it, an impeachment proceeding under any circumstance. Some are Democrats who believe that if this goes forward, it will backfire and cause President Trump to be reelected. Remember, President Clinton's popularity went up after he was impeached.
Right.
And other people just don't know enough about it. So, again, I just come back to 2 points. One is that impeachment is a political remedy that's in the Constitution. If the politics are right, the people will follow on and remove the president.
But you're ultimately saying you see impeachable conduct in the report, and you think that the American people will too. If a proceeding of impeachment basically is forcing that information regularly and constantly into their face, right? I mean, the more they know, the more they'll see. Is that it?
Well, I agree. The more they know, the more they'll see. But I don't necessarily agree that even if you have full hearings, that you'll get to articles of impeachment in the House or removal in the Senate. But the point again is that the Constitution contemplates that the Congress will exercise vigorous oversight of the president. Right now, what we've had is the executive branch, that is, Mr. Mueller worked for Mr. Sessions and Mr. Barr, who worked for Mr. Trump. The executive branch has investigated itself, right? And Congress hasn't done anything. Now Congress needs to act. It can't say, oh, well, the executive branch investigated, now we'll just step aside.
Well, as you know, the president has a lot of defenders in the Senate. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham, certainly among them, this week says he won't call Robert Mueller to testify because his report was the end of things and the report is now in the rearview mirror. Here's Lindsey Graham.
I am confident that this investigation of the Trump campaign was thorough, complete, exhaustive. I'm not going to do any more. Enough already. It's over.
Is the Mueller report the end of things or just the beginning as you see it?
Well, it's a political decision, and for Senator Graham, he's making the political decision that he can stop investigation, and that's okay. But I still think that from a constitutional perspective, from separation of powers perspective, the Congress really has the oversight power over the executive branch, and it should exercise that power. Now, if ultimately the politics aren't there to return articles of impeachment or remove the president, that's okay. But I believe that the Congress abdicates its duty if it
By not
doesn't
proceeding.
investigate.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And next, the unemployment rate now at a nearly 50-year low. So, are voters feeling the benefits? Plus, President Trump seizing on a new report, claiming it is proof his campaign was spied on. The word that
Hello, YouTube viewers. I know I've already given this word about Trump, but I just think I should give it one more time under a different title. YouTube viewers, listen. One day, recently, the Lord clearly told me, he said, Blake, tell my people that Donald John Trump Sr. is the last president that your country, the United States, will have before I send Jesus back. Well, I was a little uncertain about it, but I went ahead and gave that word. But even though I was uncertain about it, because Matthew 24 says that no man knows the day nor the hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor Jesus himself. So after I announced that word and put it on YouTube here, I asked him to verify it. Well then, several days later, he repeated it several times, 2 days in a row. He repeated it several times, 2 days in a row. So YouTube viewers, this is the word from the Lord about Trump. Trump Sr. is the last president before Jesus comes back. I repeat, Trump Sr. is the last president before Jesus comes back. Thank you. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hello YouTube viewers, this is Blake Fannin. Listen, I was thinking of a video I made quite a long time ago. I was thinking about something that I thought I'd heard the Lord tell me several months ago, but I wasn't sure. It was about me thinking that I heard him say that Trump was the last president. Several months back, I thought I heard the Lord say that Trump was going to be the last president. I thought I heard the Lord say that, but I wasn't completely sure. Well, just a minute ago, I was thinking of when that prophecy happened. I was thinking about what I said and what I thought I heard the Lord say, and just before I made this video, I asked him, I said, Jesus, if it be thy will, please tell me if Trump is going to be the the last president. I asked him to please tell me. I asked him to please tell me if Trump would be the final president of the United States. I repeat, I asked him to tell me if Trump would be the last and final president of the United States. And I heard the Lord clearly say to me, he said, that's correct. He said, for sure. He said, that is correct. That is for sure. That's what he said to me on the day that I made this video. That's what he said to me even as I was filming this video. He said, that is correct. That is for sure. The Lord clearly just told me that Trump is going to be the last and final president of the United States. And he said, the rapture is at hand. The rapture hour is around the corner. Christians, repent of all your sins and get ready. Prepare.
Handling of things like the cost of college education that reflect what people are feeling in their homes. So does it mean another 4 years for Donald Trump? 18 months from an election. It's always better at any point in time for an incumbent president to have good good unemployment numbers. But I think there's a lot of other issues at play here.
So Rick, to the sort of the point Jen is making, I am curious why you look at, and obviously, you know, I don't want to read too much into comparing one poll to another because they're different polls, but these numbers still are important to mention, right? 56% of Americans say he's doing a good job in the economy in our latest poll. But the most recent Monmouth poll shows only 12% of Americans say their family has benefited a great deal from recent growth in the U.S. economy. So they're saying, it seems like people think, okay, he's doing a good job, but it's not helping me. And isn't it that perception that matters the most to voters?
Yeah, I guess it is. I mean, look, all I can say is that the numbers are pretty compelling. I mean, one number I saw was, you know, high school folks with a high school education, that their wages went up 6%. I mean, this is exactly what Donald Trump said he was going to do. He was going to take the forgotten workers out there, the folks that Joe Biden thinks are the key to his election. And he's actually delivering. I mean, wages for lower income people are going up. And so he is delivering on his promises. And it's a matter, look, I think a lot of the things that you're seeing on these polls are a distraction from the Mueller report and all the other things that are going on. Now that is hopefully somewhat behind us, and the president, if he's smart, continues just to focus on this economic news and start bringing it home to the American public, particularly in a campaign, I think it's a really strong position to be in.
It seems that way. The question is, at what risk, Jim? I mean, I know you mentioned a couple of concerns in an overall, as you see it, very strong report. But that's the question here. I mean, there have been months and months of headlines that have included things like, recession is coming, right? Stocks tumble. Are you ready for the financial crisis of 2019? Those are just a few. I mean, it was everywhere. And there were experts saying that this was a big risk. Were all those fears overblown, or are they still there?
No, I don't think the fears were overblown last year. The stock market was down a lot. The Federal Reserve raised rates. There was a fear that the Federal Reserve was going to have a mistake and cause a recession. But I do think that they are rapidly dissipating. The first quarter GDP rebounded nice. The stock market's back at all-time highs. The dollar's stable. So most of the indicators that you would look at have gotten materially better than they were 3 or 4 months ago. And so is consumer confidence in the outlook on the economy.
So what about here some of the details, though, Rick? Let me ask you about according to Gallup, 14% of Americans say their taxes have gone down because of Trump's tax plan. That's not true. I mean, they're inaccurate in saying that, right? I mean, the vast majority of people's taxes went down, yet only 14% of people feel that way. That's a really big messaging issue.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But look, let's look at this. I mean, number one, you have a big chunk of the American public, over 40%, that doesn't pay federal income taxes. So to say that my taxes didn't go down is probably accurate. Their taxes probably didn't go down. And if you look at folks, particularly up in the Northeast and in the West Coast, that pay a lot in state and local taxes,
right?
they probably didn't see their taxes go down that
That
much
is very
either.
true. That is
So-
very true. But as a percentage of overall taxpayers,
No,
it's
but
still
I-
a small number. I mean,
No, I'm saying the folks who felt the tax reductions are the people who, frankly, are the ones that most politicians and most economists are concerned about, and those are the working folks who are paying taxes, making enough to pay taxes, middle income, maybe middle higher income, and they're the ones who didn't have the big state and local tax deductions, who are really benefiting from this tax cut, and that's a big chunk of America that's really helping this economy.
so Jen, do people like Joe Biden have a risk though? Because Joe Biden said the other day, right, that people didn't get this tax cut, but they did, right? I mean, what he said was not factually true either. Is he going to get called out on it, or is this going to work for him to campaign on the economy?
Well, I think that Joe Biden and a lot of the Democrats are going to keep campaigning on the issues that they think people are talking about at their kitchen table, which is always the case in every presidential race, right? But it's changed a little bit. Right now, if we looked at recent CNN polls and other polls, the issues Democrats are focused on are health care, their climate change, their guns, so I expect they'll talk about that. But they'll also talk about the economy as it relates to helping people make their lives better, so things like the cost of education. So I think Joe Biden, he can be a little rough with his words sometimes, or not exact with his words sometimes. So what he's trying to get at is that people have to choose between who's going to make people's lives better, and he thinks he's presenting the best option for that.
So Jim, when you look here at the runway that we have, which is 18 months, a lot can change in 18 months, right? But I guess there's sort of a sweet spot where things need to be really good or turn around really significantly to change the outcome of an election. What is your biggest fear over the next 18 months? What's the biggest risk for the economy?
I think it's probably the Federal Reserve right now. Interest rates they've been raising rates. They're on hold right now. Inflation is low, but they seem to want to find a reason to keep raising rates. That's what was behind what happened in December and January. And I fear that they might try and find another reason to raise rates again in the next 18 months. And it might not go well this time, just like it did last time.
All right. Thank you all very much. And next, did the FBI spy on Trump? As you know, the president says yes, and today called it worse than Watergate. But a former top FBI official, a Republican lawmaker, said
Listen closely, every one of you. Listen closely. Thank you. Please like, share, and subscribe, and be quiet during this video every time you watch it, or whenever you're with or on the phone with someone who's watching it. Thank you. Please like, share, subscribe, and be quiet.
Chapter 3.
No,
In those days, John
One
the
second, I'm sorry.
Chapter 4. Chapter 17. Chapter 20. Chapter 23. Chapter 24. As Jesus was leaving the temple grounds, his disciples pointed out to him the various temple buildings. But he told them, "Do you see all these buildings? I assure you they will be so completely demolished that not one stone will be left on top of another." Later, Jesus sat on the slopes of the Mount of Olives. His disciples came to him privately and asked,
"When will all this take place? And will there be any sign ahead of time to signal your return and the end of the world?"
Jesus told them, "Don't let anyone mislead you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Messiah. They will lead many astray, and wars will break out near and far, but don't panic. Yes, these things must come, but the end won't follow immediately. Nations and kingdoms will proclaim war against each other, and there will be famines and earthquakes in many parts of the world. But all this will be only the beginning of the horrors to come. Then you will be arrested, persecuted, and killed. You will be hated all over the world because of your allegiance to me. And many will turn away from me and betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and will lead many people astray. Sin will be rampant everywhere, and the love of many will grow cold. But those who endure to the end will be saved. And the good news about the kingdom will be preached throughout the whole world, so that all nations will hear it. And then, finally, the end will come. The time will come when you will see what Daniel the prophet spoke about, the sacrilegious object that causes desecration standing in the holy place. Reader, pay attention. Then those in Judea must flee to the hills. A person outside the house must not go inside to pack. A person in the field must not return even to get a coat. How terrible it will be for pregnant women and for mothers nursing their babies in those days. And pray that your flight will not be in winter or on the Sabbath, for that will be a time of greater horror than anything the world has ever seen or will ever see again. In fact, unless that time of calamity is shortened, the entire human race will be destroyed, but it will be shortened for the sake of God's chosen ones. Then if anyone tells you, look, here is the Messiah, or there he is, don't pay any attention, for false messiahs and false prophets will rise up and perform great miraculous signs and wonders so as to deceive, if possible, even God's chosen ones. See, I have warned you. So if someone tells you, look, the Messiah is out in the desert, don't bother to go and look. Or, look, he is hiding here, don't believe it. For as the lightning lights up the entire sky, so it will be when the Son of Man comes. Just as the gathering of vultures shows there is a carcass nearby, so these signs indicate that the end is near. Immediately after those horrible days end, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. And then at last, the sign of the coming of the Son of Man will appear in the heavens, and there will be deep mourning among all the nations of the earth, and they will see the Son of Man arrive on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send forth his angels with the sound of a mighty trumpet blast, and they will gather together his chosen ones from the farthest ends of the earth and heaven. Now learn a lesson from the fig tree. When its buds become tender and its leaves begin to sprout, you know, without being told, that summer is near. Just so, when you see the events I've described beginning to happen, you can know his return is very near, right at the door. I assure you, this generation will not pass from the scene before all these things take place. Heaven and earth will disappear, but my words will remain forever. However, no one knows the day or the hour when these things will happen, not even the angels in heaven or the Son himself. Only the Father knows. When the Son of Man returns, it will be like it was in Noah's day. In those days before the flood, the people were enjoying banquets and parties and weddings right up to the time Noah entered his boat. People didn't realize what was going to happen until the flood came and swept them all away. That is the way it will be when the Son of Man comes. Two men will be working together in the field. One will be taken, the other left. Two women will be grinding flour at the mill. One will be taken, the other left. So be prepared, because you don't know what day your Lord is coming. Know this, a homeowner who knew exactly when a burglar was coming would stay alert and not permit the house to be broken into. You also must be ready all the time, for the Son of Man will come when least expected. Who is a faithful, sensible servant to whom the master can give the responsibility of managing his household and feeding his family? If the master returns and finds that the servant has done a good job, there will be a reward. I assure you the master will put that servant in charge of all he owns. But if the servant is evil and thinks, my master won't be back for a while, and begins oppressing the other servants, partying and getting drunk. Well, the master will return unannounced and unexpected. He will tear the servant apart and banish him with the hypocrites. In that place, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Chapter 25.
Since last May, right? We knew about this, right? We knew that George Papadopoulos had, bragged about information the Russians had to the Australians, who told the Americans, who then looked into it to see if there was something untoward happening, right? We knew about Halper. So when Trump seizes on this and says, this is worse than Watergate, this is such a huge development that there is this woman working alongside Halper, does that really change the story or develop it to you in any way, that there's now an additional person working as an informant?
Aaron, it really doesn't. It again confirms, the reporting suggests and confirms in my mind that if accurate, this is yet another classic example of how the FBI does counterintelligence investigations. Frankly, you're right, there's not a whole lot in this report that's new from what has been previously reported, but it all just seems to be standard operating procedure for the FBI.
So Attorney General Bill Barr this week did confirm something in his hearing, which is the Trump campaign received a briefing in August of 2016 about the Russia threat specifically, right? We know here at CNN that President Trump himself was personally warned that month by senior U.S. intelligence officials that foreign adversaries, specifically including Russia, would likely attempt to infiltrate his team or gather intelligence about his campaign. Now, we know that some of these meetings and informant happened prior to that. Do you think it's a fair question for the Trump team to ask now whether those warnings went far enough or were detailed enough?
I don't, and I'll explain why. And it was good to see that the Attorney General corrected his prior testimony, because I will tell you that it is publicly known that both campaigns were briefed after their respective conventions.
Yeah.
At one point, Senator Grassley wrote a letter to the FBI that I answered, asking for information about those briefings, and so we made it clear that those briefings did happen. But to the extent that there was an ongoing investigation, counterintelligence or criminal investigation that may have touched upon the Trump campaign, that is certainly something that would not be briefed to campaign officials, because those same officials might potentially be the subjects of that investigation. That's just investigations 101.
Okay. So to you, this all adds up, is the bottom line.
Right.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Good to have you as always.
Thanks, Aaron.
And next, the fight for 2020. Is it all about a fresh face or experience?
What do you say to some Democrats who are like, time for some new blood?
Well, new blood that would lose would really be horrible, wouldn't it?
Plus, Jeannie Mose on Joe Biden getting folksy.
Folks. Now, YouTube viewers, in case you had any trouble hearing that video of Matthew 24 that I played off of my YouTube channel with my smart TV, I'm going to let you hear Matthew 24 again from my Bible on my iPhone.
Matthew 24. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, and pestilences, and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye, that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs, and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not. For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So likewise ye, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass, till all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came, and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken, the other left. 2 women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken, and the other left. Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched, and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household to give them meat in due season? Blessed is that servant, whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. But And if that evil servant shall say in his heart, My Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew 25. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps, and went forth to meet the bridegroom. And 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps, and took no oil with them. But the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose, and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, Give us of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you. But go ye rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, Verily I say unto you, I know you not. Watch therefore, for ye know neither the day, nor the hour, wherein the Son of Man cometh. For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants, and delivered unto them his goods. And unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to every man according to his several ability, and straightway took his journey. Then he that had received the 5 talents went and traded with the same, and made them other 5 talents. And likewise he that had received 2, he also gained other 2. But he that had received 1 went and digged in the earth, and hid his Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants cometh, and reckoneth with them. And so he that had received 5 talents came, and brought other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 talents more. His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. He also that had received 2 talents came and said, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained 2 other talents beside them. His Lord said unto him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art an hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and went, and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, there thou hast that is thine. His Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest that I reap where I sowed not, and gather where I have not strawed. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money to the exchangers, and then at my coming I should have received mine own with usury. Take therefore the talent from him, and give it unto him which hath 10 talents. For unto every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath. And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. And before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left.
Former FBI Director James Comey and AC360 Town Hall Thursday night at 8 Eastern, only on CNN.
Tonight, a word Joe Biden can't stop saying. Here's Jeannie.
Joe Biden is known for his folksy image, and boy, did he live up to it.
Hey, folks.
From the first words out of his mouth.
Folks, look, folks. The folks.
Get used to it, folks.
Look, folks. Look, folks. Folks, look.
Donald Trump may be famous for saying,
I know words, I have the best words.
But even President Trump doesn't spew the same word.
Folks.
At this rate, in a single speech.
Folks.
Biden's first speech as a 2020 presidential candidate in Iowa.
Folks, look. Folks,
As Trevor Noah put it,
people don't just love Joe Biden because he's a down-to-earth, everyday man. No. People love him because he's an adorable goofball.
Joe blew a few words.
to wage a war on Twitter. I think of it the first way.
The day before, he created his own word.
The UAW took incredible cuts in their future.
A cross between incredible and extraordinary, while President Trump prefers an earthy cuss word.
With ridiculous bull.
Biden makes BS sound quaint.
That's so much malarkey.
He even gets folksy about foreigners, in this case, the Chinese.
They're not bad folks.
In a single half-hour speech,
Folks, look.
we didn't look, we counted.
And folks, and folks, we've got to stop it.
We thought he stopped at 32, but later he stopped for a chocolate and vanilla ice cream cone, and Folksy Joe had one more to go.
Any of these folks want ice cream is on me.
Joe left $40. You're welcome, folks. Jeannie Moos, CNN.
That's all, folks.
New York.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great weekend. Anderson starts now.
Good evening.
Daniel 11. Also, I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I, stood to confirm and to strengthen him. And now will I show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. And a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, and not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up even for others beside those. And the king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him, and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. And in the end of years they shall join themselves together, for the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand, nor his arm, but she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begot her, and he that strengthened her in these times. But out of a branch of her roots shall one stand up in his estate, which shall come with an army, and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north, and shall deal against them, and shall prevail, and shall also carry captives into Egypt their gods, with their princes, and with their precious vessels of silver and of gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. So the king of the south shall come into his kingdom, and shall return into his own land. But his sons shall be stirred up, and shall assemble a multitude of great forces. And one shall certainly come, and overflow, and pass through. Then shall he return, and be stirred up, even to his fortress. And the king of the south shall be moved with choler, and shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north. And he shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into his hand. And when he hath taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by it. But the king of the north shall return, and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come after certain years with a great army and with much riches. And in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fall. So the king of the north shall come, and cast up a mount, and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. But he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him. And he shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed. He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do. And he shall give him the daughter of women, corrupting her. But she shall not stand on his side, neither before him. After this shall he turn his face unto the isles, and shall take many. But a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach he shall cause it to turn upon him. Then he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land. But he shall stumble and fall and not be found. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom. But within few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. And in his estate shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably, and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. And with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. And after the league made with him he shall work deceitfully. For he shall come up, and shall become strong with a small people. He shall enter peaceably, even upon the fattest places of the province. And he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey, and spoil, and riches, yea, and he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. And he shall stir up his power, and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army. But he shall not stand, for they shall forecast devices against him. Yea, they that feed of the portion of his meat shall destroy him, and his army shall overflow, and many shall fall down slain. And both these kings' hearts shall be to do mischief, and they shall speak lies at one table, but it shall not prosper, for yet the end shall be at the time appointed. Then shall he return into his land with great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant. And he shall do exploits, and return to his own land. At the time appointed he shall return, and come toward the south. But it shall not be as the former, or as the latter. For the ships of Shittim shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved, and return, and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries. But the people that do know their God shall be strong, and do exploits. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many, yet they shall fall by the sword, and by flame, by captivity, and by spoil many days. Now when they shall fall, they shall be helped with a little help, but many shall cleave to them with flatteries, and some of them of understanding shall fall, to try them, and to purge, and to make them white even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself, and magnify himself above every god. and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined shall be done. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any God, for he shall magnify himself above all. But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver, and with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. At the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, and with horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. He shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy, and utterly to make away many. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. Daniel 12. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars for ever and ever. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words, and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood other two, the one on this side of the bank of the river, and the other on that side of the bank of the river. And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, How long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth for ever that it shall be for a time, times, and an half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. And I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that waiteth, and cometh to the 1,330 days. But go thou thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest, and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. The Book of Hosea.
Now, YouTube viewers, the reason for this video is so that you will know how soon we Christians could leave the earth. If you have asked if you are a Bible believing Christian and you're afraid you won't be forgiven because of something you've said or done, read the following chapters: John 8, 1 John 1, and 1 John 4. Please like, share, and subscribe.